Some people are born into love. I was born into silence. My name is Tam Neem, and I was the child they lost, only to be found again. But my return wasn't the joyful reunion you see in dramas. No tearful hugs. No warm welcomes. Just a hollow glance from a mother who called me a mistake and a father who said nothing at all. The family that should have cherished me made me invisible. I wasn't the daughter they waited for, I was the inconvenience they never wanted. All their love was poured into one girl, Tam Yuen Nee, their adopted daughter, the shining star, the perfect one. And me? I was just the shadow she stood in. But just when I thought the world had no place for me, he appeared. Uncle Bui Tunian didn't come with promises. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. His eyes were enough. They told me, without words, that I mattered. That I wasn't broken. That maybe, just maybe, I deserved to be loved. And that changed everything. Part 1, the night I came home. I was 15 when I returned to the Tam family. That night was supposed to be about me, but of course, it wasn't. I stepped into their mansion and found myself in the middle of a grand birthday party, golden lights, laughter echoing through the halls, expensive gifts piled high. It was for Tam Yuen Nee. She wore a white lace dress and a diamond tiara, looking every bit like the princess she was raised to be. Everyone circled around her, smiling, praising, celebrating. And me? I stood at the edge of the room in an oversized school uniform and second-hand shoes. No one noticed. My mother, Tam Lu, eventually came over and wrapped her arms around me, more out of obligation than warmth. Her embrace was cold. Her perfume suffocated me. She bent down and whispered in my ear, voice sweet but sharp like a knife. You should be grateful we brought you back. Don't cause trouble. Yuen Nee's the one who matters here. My heart sank. I hadn't even said a word. Then came my father, Tam Vin Shuyan. A man who built an empire with charm and strategy. To the outside world, he was admired. To me, he was a stranger. He looked at me for 3 seconds, nodded, and turned away. That was all. And the brothers. Tam Hao, Tam Duk, and Tam Lang. All older than me. All strong. All smart. All distant. They nodded politely, then returned to fussing over Yuen Nee like I didn't exist. In that moment, I realized something. I hadn't been welcomed home. I had been reintroduced as a background character in a play that never had a role for me. That night, I sat alone in the corner while they cut Yuen Nee's birthday cake. The same flavor I used to love, strawberry cream. But when I took a bite, it tasted like regret. Like loss. Like I had come home to a place that had no room for me. Part 2, a silent house, a loud heart. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. I was given a room on the second floor, far from everyone else. It was clean, cold, and lifeless. A bed. A desk. Cream-colored curtains. Nothing that belonged to me. Nothing that said welcome home. At breakfast, they'd talk around me. Conversations floated between real estate deals, grades, vacation plans. I sat with my hands in my lap, chewing toast that tasted like cardboard, pretending not to hear when Yuen Nee mentioned how some people just don't fit in no matter how hard you try to help them. I knew that was for me. Everything she said was for me. She was kind, but it was the kind of kindness that held poison underneath. She'd offer to walk me to school, only to loudly whisper about how I wasn't used to being in the city. She'd lend me clothes, then giggle to her friends about how vintage they looked on me. And the worst part? Everyone believed her. Even my brothers. Especially my mother. One evening, I passed by the living room. They didn't know I was there. She just doesn't have Yuen Nee's presence, my mother said, sipping tea. She's not like us, said Tam Hao. She's fragile. Fragile. As if I were a vase on the verge of breaking. No one asked why. No one cared that maybe, just maybe, I was fragile because I'd been dropped too many times. I ran upstairs and slammed the door, burying my face into the cold pillow. No tears came. I had cried too much already. My body had learned to grieve without sound. That night, I sat by the window and watched the lights of the city blink like stars pretending to shine. And I thought, if this is what it means to be home, maybe I was better off lost. But then, came a knock. Part 3, The Man at the Door. It was a deep, steady knock. Not like my brother's impatient banging. Not like the housekeeper's soft taps. This was different. I opened the door, and there he was, tall, calm, dressed in a black wool coat, with a faint scar near his temple that only made him look more striking. "Tamneem?" he asked. I nodded, unsure. "I'm Bui Tunian," he said, voice low but warm. "Your uncle." I had never met him. Only heard his name once, in a fight between my parents. Something about how he never bowed to the Tam family and should have stayed out of our business. But now he was here. For me. "I'm here to take you out for a while," he said. "Get your coat." No one stopped us as we left the house. Not a single voice called after me. Not one person asked where I was going. Not even Yu Ni. We drove in silence for a while. The city blurred outside the window, and I focused on his reflection in the glass, sharp jawline, serious eyes, but something about him felt safe. We stopped at a small tea house on a quiet street. He ordered for both of us without asking, like he already knew what I'd like. "Your parents, they don't know how to love what they can't control," he said simply, stirring his tea. "They raised you and me to shine because she plays the part perfectly. You don't fit their script." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat felt tight. "But that's not your fault, Neem." It never was. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the cup. The warmth of the tea seeped into my fingers, and something inside me shifted. For the first time in years, I felt seen. And just like that, the quiet in my heart wasn't so heavy anymore. Part 4, A Different Kind of Home. After that night, everything began to change. Uncle Tunian didn't take me back to the Tam mansion. Instead, he brought me to his home, an old villa on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by pine trees and silence. There was no crystal chandelier, no marble floors, no expensive artwork. But it felt more like home than any place I had ever known. He didn't ask me to speak. He didn't ask me to smile. He simply let me be. For the first time in my life, I had my own room that wasn't an afterthought. A soft bed with lavender sheets. A shelf already stocked with novels. A desk by the window where sunlight poured in each morning. It felt like someone had prepared it, not for a guest, but for a girl they wanted to be there. That first week, I hardly spoke. The trauma still lived in my body like a second skin. But slowly, day by day, something loosened. My shoulders uncurled. My breath deepened. My voice returned. Uncle Tunian wasn't the kind of man who filled silences with noise. He was the kind who fixed a broken chair in the backyard without saying a word, and then handed you a screwdriver with a slight nod as if to say, "You're capable, too." And I wanted to be. For him. For myself. Part 5, Becoming Someone New. I began studying again, not because anyone told me to, but because I wanted to. Books became my sanctuary. Physics, math, literature, I devoured them like a starving child. Uncle Tunian would silently drop practice exams on my desk, never pressuring me, just offering. And I rose. I aced the national entrance exam mock tests. I started winning school competitions. Even teachers began to notice me. But the moment I'll never forget came one rainy afternoon. I was sitting on the porch, flipping through a practice test, frustrated and on the verge of tears. The rain beat down hard, and the ink on my page began to blur. I didn't notice when he stepped outside. But I did hear his voice. "You don't have to be perfect," he said softly. "You just have to keep choosing not to give up." That sentence, so simple, so quiet, broke me open. I cried. For everything. For the 15 years of emptiness. For the cruel comparisons. For the rejection I never deserved. He didn't try to stop me. He just sat beside me in the rain, letting me cry until there was nothing left. And in that moment, I realized. I wasn't broken. I was just waiting for someone to believe I didn't need to be fixed. Part 6, Cutting the Ties. The letter came on a Monday morning. Thick envelope. Gilded logo. Tam family crest. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. My hands were steady, but my chest was burning. Inside, a formal invitation. Tam Yuyin's Celebration of Excellence Banquet. Top student of her class. Featured in a magazine. The Golden Girl, once again. At the bottom, in small print, we would be honored by your presence, dear sister. Sister. I almost laughed. But instead, I placed the invitation neatly on the table and walked away. That night, over dinner, I told Uncle Tunian I was going. He didn't try to stop me. He only looked up and said, "Make sure you wear the red dress in your closet." I frowned. "I don't have a red dress." He smiled faintly. "You do now." And there it was, laid out on my bed later that night. Deep crimson. Elegant. Sharp. Not a child's dress. A woman's. That banquet was the last time I ever stepped foot into the Tam mansion. Part 7, The Night of Truth. The moment I entered, every head turned. The music stopped. Even Tam Yuyin's perfect smile faltered. I wasn't the quiet, frightened girl they had ignored. I walked in with grace, chin high, dressed in red that burned against their polished silver. I made it through the room slowly, each step cutting through years of buried shame. My mother gasped softly when she saw me. My father blinked, confused, like seeing a ghost. My brothers didn't know what to say. Only Yuyin approached. "Look who found some confidence," she said, her voice still sweet, but now laced with fear. "I didn't find it," I replied. "I built it. With no help from any of you." Before she could answer, I turned to the crowd, guests, reporters, relatives, and said the words I had been waiting to say my entire life. My name is Tam Neem. I am the biological daughter of Tam Vinshuyan and Tam Lu. I was abandoned. Forgotten. Used. While another girl stood in my place. Gasps echoed across the room. I continued, voice steady. Tam Yuyin is not their daughter. She is the child of Nguyen Thi Dung. The woman who had an affair with my father, while my mother mourned losing me. And when I returned, they kept her, and discarded me. I left before they could speak. Let them clean up the pieces of their carefully constructed lie. Part 8, After the Storm. I didn't cry. Not when I got in the car. Not when I returned home. I simply sat on the porch with Uncle Tunian, sipping tea under the stars. "I thought it would hurt more," I said. "Does it?" I shook my head. "No. It feels clean. Like I finally peeled something rotten off my skin." He nodded. "You don't owe them your pain anymore." And he was right. From that day forward, I was no longer the girl they left behind. I was the girl who walked away. Part 9, Becoming Her Own Name. University came like a breath of fresh air. No one there knew about the Tam family. No one cared that I was the forgotten daughter, or the backdrop to someone else's spotlight. I was just Tam Neem, smart, disciplined, a bit too quiet, maybe, but no one questioned my worth. I studied like the world depended on it. Double majors. Night classes. Internships. I said yes to everything. Not because I wanted to prove something to anyone, but because I finally felt free to prove something to myself. And Uncle Tunian, he was always there. He never hovered. He didn't call to ask about my grades. But he showed up when it mattered. A quiet text on exam day. I know you've already won. A thermos of ginger tea when I caught the flu. A coat left on a chair when winter came early and I forgot mine at school. He had his own world, businesses to run, deadlines to meet, but somehow, he always made space for mine. One evening, after my final presentation of the year, I came home exhausted. My heels hurt. My head was pounding. I dropped everything at the door and found him in the garden, trimming the bonsai tree. "You're late," he said. I sat beside him. "It's been a long day." He handed me a glass of water and said nothing. But I could feel it in the air, his quiet pride, his quiet relief. It was in that moment I realized. I no longer needed a family to validate my worth. Because I had built my own foundation. And I had him. Part 10, a different kind of love. It started slowly. Like a melody I'd heard 1,000 times but never paid attention to, until one day, it brought tears to my eyes. I began to notice the way his eyes softened when I spoke. The way his voice dropped when he said my name. The way my breath caught in my chest when he brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. He never crossed a line. Never made me uncomfortable. But something unspoken bloomed between us. One night, after I returned home from a networking event, I found him in the study, staring at the fireplace. "I got offered a scholarship abroad," I said, standing in the doorway. 3 years. He didn't look up. "That's wonderful," he said, almost too softly. Silence stretched between us. I could feel something crackling beneath it, something dangerous and delicate. "Do you want me to go?" I asked. He finally turned to face me. And in his eyes, I saw everything. All the years. All the restraint. All the care he had buried. "I want you to go," he said. "Because you deserve everything this world refused you." I nodded, tears welling in my eyes. But before I could turn away, he added, "And I'll still be here. If you ever choose to come back." It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a promise. It was something deeper. The kind of love that didn't ask or demand, but waited. Steadfast. Part 11, across the ocean. Paris was a city of light, but I arrived in the middle of a downpour. 3 years. That's how long I was supposed to stay. I had a full scholarship, a new apartment, and 1,000 plans. But no one prepares you for how lonely success can feel when the person you want to share it with is an ocean away. I told myself I was fine. I threw myself into research, made friends, even learned to love the quiet museums and late-night cafes. But every night, when I closed the door behind me, I found myself reaching for my phone, wondering if he was awake. Wondering if he had eaten. Wondering if he still remembered the way I used to bring him tea when he worked too late. We didn't talk much. A few texts. Short calls on holidays. But every message from him felt like oxygen. Then came the call. He had collapsed during a board meeting. Stress. Fatigue. Nothing critical, but enough to make me buy a return ticket within the hour. I told myself it was just concern. Gratitude. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't going home. I was going back to him. Part 12, The Man Who Waited. I arrived just before dawn. The house was the same. Still quiet. Still serene. But when I stepped inside, something shifted in my chest, like everything had been waiting, frozen, for me to return. He was sitting in the study, wrapped in a blanket, a book open in his lap. He looked older, just slightly. There were shadows under his eyes. But when he saw me, the entire room lit up. "You came back," he said simply. I nodded, throat tight. "You didn't text me. Why didn't you say anything?" He gave a soft smile. "Because I knew you would come." I sat down across from him, the silence thick with everything unsaid. "I thought of you every day," I admitted, voice barely a whisper. "And I hated how far I was from you." He looked at me then, not as a guardian, not as a protector, but as a man holding back every feeling he'd buried. "I love you, Neem," he said. "I have for a long time. But I didn't want to be another person who took something from you. I wanted to give you space to choose." My heart broke open. "I chose you a long time ago," I said. "I just didn't know how to say it." Part 13, A Name of My Own. We didn't rush. There were no grand announcements. No sweeping declarations. Just quiet mornings. Shared meals. Long walks. He still called me by my full name, Tam Neem, but every time he said it, it sounded less like a reminder of my past, and more like a promise of who I had become. I no longer flinched when I saw my reflection. I no longer felt the urge to apologize for existing. I was no longer someone's daughter, someone's shadow, someone's sacrifice. I was mine. And he was home.